Hello, everyone. This is Sam from Remax as well as SaberiSixRealEstate. Back with Ali from Remax as well. Ali, how you doing today?
Doing well. How are you, handsome Sam?
I'm great. Handsome Sam. You know, as he calls me Handsome Sam, I always call him my mentor. Anyways, so on today's episode, we're going to discuss some market trends and stats, specifically as they relate to the latest market stats that were released. And during the conversation, we talk about stuff that's related, unrelated. We try to have fun and inform. So if you enjoy our podcast, please consider subscribing, comment, rate, and review. Give a thumbs up if you want to. If you don't want to, feel free to give a thumbs down. As well, our contact information. Huh?
Don't feel free to do that.
I'm okay with it. He's not. Our contact information is in the description box. We've been getting some people reaching out recently. We appreciate it. We're here to assist you in any questions you have. As well, if you have any questions you want us to discuss on the podcast, feel free to email one of us and we'll be happy to do so.
We are open to your suggestions.
Exactly. So let's talk about the latest condo market stats that were released for the third quarter of 2020. Right? And we're just going to go through some of the major figures and numbers. So let's start with average selling price. Now, this is for all condo types. The average selling price for the third quarter of 2020 saw an 8.3% increase. Before we go further into the stats, we're going to first present the facts and then break it down and analyze it in our own opinions. So let's just go through the numbers first, right? So 8.3% increase from the third quarter of 2019, wherein the average price was $584,000. Now the average price stands at $633,000. Once again, an 8.3% increase, right?
Right.
Going to the next number, which is the total sales, we saw about a 10.5% increase, wherein it went from 6,000 to 7,000, right? So about 700 to 1,000. If you look at this specific numbers, it went from 6,398 to 7,072, 10.5% increase.
Yeah.
And then this is, in my opinion. Now, once again, we're just presenting the facts. We'll get to my opinion later, but this is something you should take note of. 84% increase, 84.6% increase in the total number of listings.
New listings,
not active. Meaning there was, in the third quarter of 2019, there was 9,542 total new listings in the third quarter. Whereas now in 2020, in the same period, 17,000. That is large. That's
an 84%
84% increase. And the sales to listing ratio. Now, how would you describe the sales to listing? Because I don't want to do all the talking. How would you tell that to like a person who has not ever been involved in the market? How would you explain that?
Sales to listing ratio? You mean the selling price?
No, sales to new listings ratio.
My mistake. Yeah, I had that. Well, essentially, let's put it this way, very simple. I think the number is for about every 5 new listings that come on the market, 1 property sells. I think that's the ratio.
That's the problem. What is it? It's just basically sales to new listing.
Well,
how many? It is what it sounds like. It's for every new listing. How many of those every new listings actually sell, right?
Which is what I said.
Yeah, but you gave you gave it like a rule of thumb about how often.
No, that's based on the numbers right now.
No, but right now it's 27%, minus 27%, meaning 67% in 2019 of new listings for condos actually moved, like new product that people were trying to sell. 67% of those new products actually got sold. Now it's down to 40%.
67% sold?
So in 2019.
In 2019, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's dipped by 27%.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So meaning now, and obviously less than ever, it's the case that less than last year, at least, not ever, that was too strong of a word, but condos for sale are not selling. Only 40% of them are selling. We've discussed this in previous podcasts. with leases and condo sales, right? So these are just the numbers. Surprisingly, I'm actually kind of surprised by this. The days on market is down. The days on market the third quarter of 2019 was 22 average days. Now it's 20, which that's actually surprised me. I assumed days on market would be up.
Keep in mind, this is not just Toronto. This includes Halton, Peel, York, Durham. This includes all of the areas.
But I'm sure you would agree that the bulk of condos, even though there are plenty of condos in Mississauga,
right?
Yeah, but the bulk of the transactions and where the stats derive from
are in Toronto, in the 416. Yes.
Yeah.
C1, C8, C14, C7. I agree with you. Yes. However, once again, it's an average. So, the 2 days can be considered as a lot. A lot of things do happen in 2 days, but when you take the average, might not represent a whole big significance in change, my opinion. But go back to the negative 27. You're telling me that the number of properties that are selling has dropped by 27% compared to last year.
So the number of listings that are actually selling,
right?
Exactly,
has dropped
relative to the number of listings that exists, has decreased by 27% in terms
year over year.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So no, yeah, exactly. But the third quarter to third quarter,
right?
So these are the basic numbers, and then we can go through more numbers, by community. I don't know if you have anything.
That's pretty much that's what I focused more on.
Yeah.
You're looking at
the general.
Yeah, the general. I decided to look at the numbers a little bit more based on region. So the major regions we have are Halton, Peel, Toronto, York, and Durham. Now, Halton is kind of like Oakville, Burlington, Milton area. Peel includes Mississauga, Brampton, and I think Caledon, if I'm not mistaken. And then City of Toronto is Toronto. York region is Vaughan, Richmond Hill, Markham, Stouffville, Newmarket, that whole 905 area. Durham is Pickering, Ajax, Whitby, and I think Oshawa, and maybe something further north. Right. And then there's other areas, which is like everywhere else where people live but are not significant enough to be considered as one area. Like Simcoe, for example, would be other areas. So the bulk of it, as you said, you're right, is out of the city of Toronto. So out of Q3, the 7,072 units that sold, 4,770 are in the city of Toronto.
That's upwards of 60%, I would say.
Yeah. And then the second highest is York region, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. Oh no, Peel at 895, and then York region at 723. So those are not even a quarter of what Toronto is selling.
No.
Those are, that's obviously huge for Toronto, but it's not like it's unusual, because even Q3 of last year, the bulk of the sales were once again in the city of Toronto, roughly 4,467 Q3 of last year. So the numbers went up by about 9% in the city of Toronto. But then likewise in all the other regions, we had double-digit increases. So it seems like people are leaving Toronto to move to condos in the 905s. Or perhaps first-time home buyers, instead of moving downtown, have decided to buy in the 905s.
So those are the numbers.
Yeah.
Let's break them down a bit, right?
Sure.
Let's now give our personal opinions and analysis on them. And we've been on the same page regarding these numbers, I think, the entire way through.
Yeah.
Let's address one thing, though, because I personally have been, it's a strong way to say pushing the narrative, because it sounds like I have like propaganda agenda, but just hypothesizing and saying, in my professional opinion, that a certain thing will happen, which you've been on the same boat with me, which is the decline in condos, right? And we're seeing the first inclinations of it, even more than the first inclinations of it, because you might say, well, the average price is up by about, as I said, 10% or 8%, 8.3%, right? So how can it be that it's declining? The condos are declining.
That's year over year.
That's year over year, right? You have to compare the third quarter to the first quarter of 2020. And then I'm even going to venture to say, you might even not go this far, but I think fourth quarter of 2020 will definitely, I'm not going to necessarily say it's going to be lower than the fourth quarter of 2019, but it's going to be much, the gap between the increase, the percentage increase is going to be much lower. I'm only suspecting about 6% increase at most, personally. That's my...
Year over year?
Year over year. Because things are going to get much worse in 2021, don't you think?
Well, yeah. I think come 2021, when you compare year over year, you're going to see the numbers lower than Q1 of 2019. 2020.
Exactly.
Because earlier this year, it was a hot condo market.
Very hot.
It was very hot.
Condos were moving within 4 days, 3 days, yeah.
So I think, Q1 of 2021, you're going to see the average prices and probably the number of transactions being less than Q1 of 2020. And that will be the real indicator of how the Toronto or the 416, Toronto real estate market, condo market, I should say, is doing. There will be probably more listings sitting on the market. But that's then. I think you're right. Q4 2020 compared to 2019, the average prices will still likely be a little bit higher.
But only by a factor of 6% or something like that. In my opinion, like it's just the percentage increase is gonna get lower and lower. And that's what we're seeing, right? I don't quite recall the Q2 comparison.
I have those here.
Q2, how much was Q2 up from Q2 of 2019?
On average, the number of listings, the number of sales actually were down by about 50%, but the average price was up by about 5%.
Okay.
And in 416, the average price was up about 3.5%. Sales were down 48%. York region, sales were down almost 60%, but the average price was up about 6%. So all in all, the number of sales.
That is a special case,
Q2.
though.
Yeah, that was in the midst of the pandemic.
That was before even we knew how we can show properties. Really.
Right. Yeah.
Like, what is the protocol? I'm going to have some security guard stick a gun to my forehead when I try to show a unit, which is not an actual gun, but it's one of those temperature reading devices. Yeah. But we told that story a while back.
This was in the midst of it, April, May, June, where the listings were down. We didn't really know how to navigate through this, and
that is an anomaly. I'm projecting that probably if go ahead.
Despite that, the average prices were still higher. Q2 2020 over Q2 2019.
So imagine how much they would have otherwise been higher if we're not dealing with a pandemic, right?
Yes.
So so that's just to say that it is up 8.3%, but we still haven't seen the full brunt and full force of all the market forces at play causing this decline. We haven't seen a full force. I suspect, as you suspect, you will see it more so in December and early months of 2021. Mm-hmm. But one thing we are seeing is this figure that we should talk about is 84% increase in the number of listings.
Yes.
Quarter 3 to quarter 3. That is crazy.
How many are active? I think there was 120.
I don't have that figure here, but it's I can pull it up. In terms of active listings, average. Once again, active listings was.
It's in
7,000, 250, 318%.
318%?
No, 118%.
118, that's
yes. So 118% increase in active listings, 84% increase in total listings. And once again, new listings rather, my apologies. And only 9,000 of compared to 9,000 of quarter 3 of last year. So you have an 84% discrepancy, or rather increase in listings, but you only have a 10% increase in the number of transactions. Right? Take that into account. right? So that says everything you need to know about where the condo market, in my opinion, is headed. Where number of transactions are only up by a bit, but number of listings, total new listings, is up by a large factor, right? And recently, do you have any comments on this? Because
Well, it just goes to show that as a buyer, if you're looking to get into the market as a buyer, you certainly have a lot more options
a
available to
lot
you
more,
right now.
a lot more.
The competition is not as stiff. Keep in mind that's generally speaking. There are still some properties that have something unique about them. Whether it's the layout, the
Correct.
view, the building itself. There's some units out there that are quite unique still.
I spilled quite a bit of water on myself
Well, then.
as I was drinking. Speaking of unique and special, but but
You
I
are
hope
special. That's
I
for
hope
sure.
I'm gonna lean over.
What was I saying? So those units definitely are still getting buyers to go in and bid on, and they get multiple offers. However, if the unit's not special, if there's nothing particular, there's a few units in that building available, then everyone's already seen it. There's no point in hiding it now.
That's true. That's true. There's no point.
Then you have more options and your competition is not as stiff. Which for sellers, if you have a typical unit, really your selling feature, your uniqueness here is going to be on your price. If you're holding off and waiting to get prices like you did or like there were that existed earlier in the year, back in Q1, then you're essentially you're a decoy listing, you're a decoy unit where somebody will say, well, check out that unit at that price, and they will undercut you on price in order to sell their unit faster and move on with their life, move on with whatever plans that they have. So don't hold on to Q1 prices. You're not going to see them anymore. You have to be realistic in what's happening in this market. And if you have a basic unit, then you need to price it strategically in order to get buyers to come check out your unit so you can sell it faster and move on, rather than being the decoy unit on the market that everyone else is playing off of.
So it's funny you should say that, because I was about to also get into a story about how I met with a condo unit owner, and his expectations are much higher than what we can actually sell for. And this is creating these complicated scenarios where me as a realtor, as a real estate agent, I have to go into listing appointments with clients, or not actual clients, but potential clients who want to sell, potential sellers who are interested to sell. And I have to be very blunt with them and be honest with them about the market. At the same time, I believe in my own abilities, and I would like the challenge too, to actually get the listing and to actually attempt to sell it. So it creates this complicated scenario. But luckily for me, when I visited this individual who wants to sell, his unit is entirely special. It's very unique. What would you now? When you say there's special cases, when you say in terms of what are you putting into the specialness of those cases? Is the location more so for you, or are you saying like if it's the price point? Like what do you suspect will happen to $1 million condos? Like when you're trying to get into that price point, how do you think the trends will affect more luxurious units?
The luxury units, I haven't drilled down into the numbers there. I think most people that live in luxury units are staying put for the most part, if they can afford to. But that's an entirely different market. There's not as many luxury units for sale as there is your typical 1-bedroom plus den or 2-bedroom units. Now, what I mean by special is
The building and the area.
the area, the view, perhaps.
The view,
Maybe
exactly.
you have an unobstructed view of the CN Tower and that entire skyline.
Well,
Maybe you have an unobstructed view of the lake, and every morning you wake up, you have the sun right into your unit, and it's bright and beautiful, and you can look out into the lake, and it's a very unique view that you may not get in other units or in other condos. Maybe you have 18-foot ceilings because it's a loft style condo,
Yeah.
and you have a bedroom upstairs, but your living room and kitchen is on the ground, or not ground, but on the main level of the 2-story unit, and you have roaring, sky high, 18-foot, 20-foot ceilings. Those are all unique features that you may not come across in other units.
So just to elaborate upon that, that's exactly what was the case when I went and met with this individual. They had one of the best views I've ever seen of the CN Tower.
Mm-hmm.
Frankly, it wasn't too close, but not too far. It was perfect distance to not just the CN Tower, but the entire skyline of the downtown core.
Right.
And that's why it was complicated for me to price it for him at an accurate, like I always say, I always give ranges. I don't know about you, but I give a range, a reasonable range. And it's difficult with those types of units because you do have a downward pressure on condos in general that's leading to a decline, and even more so in 2021. But at the same time, if there are special cases, as you said, and there are unique features about certain condos that you have to take into account in equilibrium with all the negatives, right? So it makes it a bit of a more complicated exercise to price it. Of course, you always have to account for, like, if this individual, if I were to be, too overly negative and too overly honest, would they want to even work with me, right? That's something every agent has to battle within themselves to see, am I here to get a listing or am I here to do the job right? And that's, a conflict within most realtors, in my opinion. Point being, all that is taken into account. With this condominium, it was kind of difficult for me to price it. Not to say didn't eventually fall towards a price point that I think will be good for the unit, but right now the condo market is in flux, and those special cases are in more of a gray area that can be complicated to determine.
Right, especially if there's no history of sales or of units that have sold that are similar in size, layout, and those special features.
Yeah,
so
comparisons were few.
Right. So it does make it a bit more difficult to land on a price. So then you just kind of have to make those adjustments and really, really do a lot of research on perhaps other units in different areas to compare. Like, for example, the view. If there's another unit in a different building, maybe 2-3 kilometers away, to see what view they had and how much that sold for, and then comparing it to others that don't have quite the same view, then you can come to some reasonable estimation as to what the premium is for such a view. It's hard.
I put it at $60K.
The view?
Yeah, I told them at $60K.
Right.
Maybe I overestimated, maybe not. I feel confident that $60K is the right price, but anyways, back to the general market. So do you have any closing statements on these numbers, and any other thoughts you want to share?
Other thoughts, listen, if you're a seller, if you own a condo, you really got to figure out what your plans are. Are you looking to upsize and move out of the city? Then, or not even out of the city, within the city, if you want to upsize out of your condo and move into a townhome or whatever, then you really have to price strategically, because you don't want to sit on the market for too long. The longer you're on the market, the staler your listing gets, the lower it's going to sell for. And if you have plans and you want to see them through, then have a serious conversation, an honest conversation as to what you need in order to make your plans happen. If the market is below what your needs are, then consider staying put, especially if you can afford to stay put for the next year to 2 years, or perhaps even 3 years, if this COVID stuff really is not behind us by that time. If you can't afford to stay put and end up having to rent or something because the expenses are too much, then once again, have a realistic and honest conversation with your realtor. Hopefully it's us. And if not, then just figure out what you need to be at price-wise in order to sell. If you're a buyer and you want to get into the market, it's certainly a good time to start looking. We do think that the prices will probably dip a little bit. However, that's not to say that a unique unit will always come to market, right?
That is true. That is
that
true.
view, that layout, those finishes, the updates, the building. That's not to say that if it is on a market right now, that you're going to see that unit again in the future, or a similar unit to it in the future. There's no guarantee of that. So don't hesitate to pull a trigger and try and get yourself a good deal for that unit if you absolutely like the unit. Because once again, there's no guarantee you'll come across that, and you don't want to regret not pulling the trigger when you had the opportunity. There's great deals to be had. You got to look at everything individually and really assess and make the best decision going forward. And if you're starting off and you need some more advice, a one-on-one, would be happy to sit down with you
Exactly.
and help you and strategically move you forward in order to realize your goal, whether you're buying or you need to sell and move on into something else.
And as a general statement, obviously case by case basis, as Ali, beautifully put, differs. Case by case basis, your finances, your goals, your the unit you want to buy, what you want, investor and user, all that matters on a case by case basis. But generally speaking, I would say that around November, maybe December, it would be a good time to start looking for a condo if you're looking to buy. But once again, case by case basis, it differs. But generally speaking, I think waiting until 2021 to buy for most people would be a better option. But obviously, once again, the details of your situation may make it so that the right unit for you may be on the market now, or you might see something that, once again, as Ali said, is not necessarily guaranteed that what you just saw now, that same unit is going to be on the market in 2021 and you're going to get it for a lower price. That's not how the market works, right? So as I've said to my clients, I would start looking. If the right thing comes by, definitely make a move on it. But generally speaking, it does not hurt to wait till 2021.
Right.
So
you never know. Anything could happen. They could literally come up with a vaccine to COVID next week or in a month.
I don't think that can literally happen, but
you never know.
Because they're
right?
saying it's going to take.
But anything can happen at any time. Like back in 2017, nobody really expected the foreign buyers tax to come into effect and for the government to impose stricter stress tests on buyers. That all of a sudden let the market down. Nobody really expected that the market would pick up so fast and so strongly after the quarantine was somewhat lifted. Like we're talking about
pent-up demand.
The phase 3 of the quarantine where things just spiked up, and likewise, you never know what's going to happen in November, December, January. Things could turn around, and it might nip you in the butt if you don't take the action or pull a trigger.
Anyways, we're back. Quick episode this week. So we just discussed the market stats. During the break, Ali told me that he had a fervent altercation, an encounter with
we're not going to get into that.
You're not?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought that's why you were telling it to me.
No. I just...
So how was door knocking, Ali? How was door knocking?
So I was going out prospecting and door knocking in two different areas. The one area, I had an encounter with an older gentleman who, I guess, didn't like the fact that I was knocking on his door or that I was on his property.
Set the scene. What time? One day?
This was like during the afternoon. It was like 2-3 in the afternoon. I forget what day it was, but
how was the weather?
Past week. It was sunny. It was nice weather. And we had just sold a property in that neighborhood, so I was going around just talking to the neighbors, and he didn't seem to like that. he thought that I was trying to sell him something. Meanwhile, I was there just to kind of connect. And, because usually what happens when you sell a property on the street, usually the neighbors around are kind of curious as to what it sold for, what happened, and so forth. So I figured it was a good time to go knock on doors and connect with the neighbors. He didn't seem to like that too much. And so we had an interesting conversation that didn't go like most of my other door knocking conversations, but won't get into that. I did, however, talk to another prospect, and they were interested in knowing what the property is worth. So I did a CMA for them, and this was actually going back to what you were saying about condos and this unique view that this one condo had, and putting a price on it. This property was a bungalow loft. A bungalow loft is actually the style of that property. So looking into the historical sales in that immediate area, there really wasn't anything similar to it at all.
Explain the bungalow loft for people. What is that?
So essentially a bungalow loft is, good call. It's a bungalow, but it's a loft style. So it does have a second story, but usually there's either a family room up there, or they'll put the 2 extra bedrooms. So this was a 3-bedroom property. The main master bedroom and the ensuite, everything was on the ground floor. There was also a powder room on the ground floor. However, they had 2 more bedrooms which were upstairs. So then there was another bathroom upstairs as well.
Yeah, with bungalow lofts, basically you just have one short, small staircase. It's not a big staircase. Leads into a one short, small hallway, and you have the bathroom, the bedrooms. There's no curvature to the hallway. It's just a straight line. Bungalow lofts, not that common, but in the area I think you're talking about, it might be common. I'm surprised.
Not in that area. This was
is this the south?
Woodbridge.
Oh, okay.
And so over there isn't most of the homes built there are your traditional or typical 2-story properties. There's not many bungalows unless it's part of the older neighborhood. In this area, most of the homes are 15 to 20 years old, which is kind of when they started getting more into the traditional 2-story properties. So I had to put together CMA. Now, the other bungalow lofts that were in the area were all over 2,000 square feet. They were substantially larger than this one. They had 2-car garages. This only had 1-car garage. Those 4 or 5 bedrooms, this was only a 3-bedroom. So I had to go into 2019, and I had to now also expand the area into Maple to come up with actually proper, decent comparables. So in that case, what I can do is, if I go into 2019, I can factor in for depreciation over time, right? That's easier than having to deduct or add or make adjustments based on finishes, number of bedrooms, and so forth. So I had to do that, and then I had to also look into Maple, which has the sale prices are pretty similar to this area in Woodbridge, and it wasn't easy, but I put together the CMA. Took me a few hours to do, and I sent it off, and there's a relationship there. I've connected with these people, and whenever they're ready, they're going to call me.
That's good. Personally, I usually only when I don't find good comparables, I just make the adjustments. So, and that's, I'm assuming, what you did as well. Mm-hmm. You made the proper adjustments, and you expanded the area a bit. With me, for door knocking, the problem I have sometimes is if it's overly cold. Now, like, it's been getting colder. There have been some sunny days, but sometimes I just feel a bit bad knocking on doors when I'm fully dressed for the cold weather and people have to probably come in their home clothes and answer and it's a bit colder. So I try to stay away from it if it's colder weather. But obviously, there's a part of me that asks myself, well, am I making excuses? Is that what's happening here? Or am I actually doing the right thing, picking in my spots? If it's a November, October day and the weather is pretty decent, I have no excuses to make. But when it's colder, sometimes I do, especially in the area I work, there's older people. So I do feel a little bad bothering them on colder days, personally. You probably don't.
No,
really
because
care.
I don't think I'm bothering them. I'm there to provide a valuable service. And I've done door knocking in the winter when it was snowing. And those people that are actually interested invited me into their home.
Oh, wow.
So, you never know when somebody is interested or not, or when somebody actually needs your services or not. So at one point I also thought that I'm bothering people, but I changed my mentality, because I'm not there to bother you. I'm there to offer you a service, a service that will benefit you, that you may need either sooner or later in your life. And so it's good for you to know that I'm at your door.
Yeah.
That's the approach that I'm taking.
For sure.
And most people have been pretty good about it. I
Yeah.
actually, even during the cold winter days, most people have not complained or made an issue out of it. They took the time to listen and to talk to me. And many of them actually even opened the door. And I remember one guy actually opened the door and he invited me in. He said, listen, I'm not interested in selling. Come on in. You can kind of take a look around. And I appreciate the fact that you're actually doing this. You're going door to door. Not a lot of people are doing it. And
You really think that's true? Not a lot of people are doing it?
Not a lot of the younger generation, I would say. Like you and I think we're part of the younger generation in real estate. The average age of our peers is probably somewhere in the 50s. And so those people, I think, do it more often because they're more used to face-to-face, door-to-door interactions and sales, whereas the younger generation is more used to email and, social media. And so that one individual actually really encouraged me, and they actually told me that this. I remember this. I respect your hustle. I respect that you're going door to door, and so that just encouraged me to keep doing it and not to think of it as anything negative. Or
I don't know if I told you this story, but I was door knocking, and maybe I told you the story off the podcast. Correct me if I did, but I was talking to one of the homeowners, and I was asking them, so what have you been doing during this COVID period? Just making conversation. And she's a historian. Did I tell you this story?
No.
She's a historian, and by trade. Now she's retired, but she used to be her history professor in the University of Toronto. And she said, oh, I'm doing this. And also I'm doing the tracking down the family tree and the genealogy of me and my husband. Are you sure I didn't tell you this story? Okay.
I don't recall.
For sure. Anyways, so I'm like, oh, that's very interesting. How far have you, her husband's name was John. How far have you placed John back? And she said, well, for me, I've only done it this far. But for him, I actually managed to trace it all the way back to the year 400. Right? So I assumed it was just a error in speech. She meant the 1400s, which is still very impressive. So I said, oh, wow, 1400s. That's crazy. Like, how did you do it? What sources did you use? She said, no, not 1400s. The 400s. I managed to trace my husband's ancestry all the way back to the 400s. Do you realize that 1,600 years ago? So basically, to establish how, I asked exactly. I'm like, that's really impressive. How did you do it? And low key in my inner thoughts, I'm like, okay, this sounds like some bullshit. But, I'm always going to give her very nice people benefit of the doubt. So I investigated a bit further. How? And she said, well, first off, you have to account for the fact that we are white people. So what usually happens is they're clearly, since they're whiter complexion people, their ancestry goes through the U.S. and through the U.S. it goes to Britain, and that's where she traced it to Great Britain in the 400s in Scotland. Since given their background, the British were very good about keeping records, and a lot of deeds and transfers of land and marriage certificates were recorded. Mm-hmm. Like for us, our people, we didn't really record a lot,
It's and written on the back of a picture somewhere.
for other people, unfortunately, for black people, they were enslaved, so a lot of their ancestry is not well kept. Like they don't really know where they're from past like when they investigate further back than 300 years, it kind of gets lost. Mm-hmm. Same for us, not because of the slavery, but because we didn't keep records, and there was a lot of migration in areas. Mm-hmm. So for whiter people, it's much easier to record back their ancestry.
Caucasians.
Yes. I said, what did I say? I said,
whiter people.
Well, no. There is differing degrees of
white.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's Italians are a bit darker complexion.
No, fair enough.
They're European.
Yeah.
But she said that, and then she said, all these sources, Ancestry. You start with Ancestry.com, then 23andMe, and then you go to like you go to online, online databases from like universities in UK. Mm-hmm. You just connect. It's like investigative work. It's not like it's not like a Google search on a Thursday afternoon.
I'm surprised she would use Ancestry.com.
That's where you start.
But why? She's a historian. She has probably a lot of the databases, and
even if she doesn't need that database, she has to see if it like how the facts correlate. Because if one database says XYZ, mm-hmm. another database says something else, then you have to.
Yeah, but who's to say that Ancestry.com is accurate?
Who's to say that Ancestry? No, she's not saying it's accurate. She's just saying I have to see all the sources available to me, what the totality say, and then investigate further. I keep doing rinse and repeats, but. It's like a funnel. Yeah, at the base level, at the highest level, you have a large amount of sources, and as it gets further and further back, the sources dwindle a bit, right?
Right.
So
fair enough.
I still don't think she traced it back to the 400s. I don't think she's lying to me. I think maybe there was some. I'm not a historian. I'm not gonna say there was some shoddy work, but maybe it was just some
loose connections
here and there. But yeah, so that was a door knocking story. I was just the whole day thinking about that. Like, do you understand the year 400? I can't even envision people. Like, I can obviously assume there were people there. There were, but like, what did they like? Just grunt?
I'm thinking of cavemen. That shouldn't be. Yeah.
But
that's how far back that seems to me.
But these are the conversations I have while door knocking. While you're out there, you get people saying, "Hey, let's do a CM." Well, I'm not saying you say that. No. I'm sorry. That was the wrong way. Anywhere really. Our approaches differ. Where I have more casual conversations. Obviously, we talk about real estate and their house and the market, but I let them bring that up. I don't. I introduce myself as a real estate salesperson. I give them my backstory. Then from there on, we just have a conversation, and any real estate matters that I think are relevant, I bring it up during conversation, but I don't try to force it. If she's like, oh yeah, I've been really good at, making cakes recently. I'm like, what's been also really good is the market. I don't do that, but I do try to, when it's relevant, bring it up, and I let them, because if they bring it up, it shows interest on their part.
No, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. You go, you present, you introduce yourself, and the first thing you'll talk about is the fact that you're there because you're a real estate agent. Let's be honest here. You're not there to ask them for baking recipes. You're there because you're a real estate agent, and your part of your job is to prospect and make connections. Now, after your introduction, that's really where, if they're interested in getting to know you, or if they want to kind of take it further. Some are just very quick and say, not interested, or I want to talk to you, and you move on. I've had many conversations with people at the door where it took off from, this is how the market's doing, and then all of a sudden the gentleman's telling me about his history of what he's done and how he's part of the York Region school board. He was this, he was that. He's been living in the house. He's doing renovations, etc., etc. You have a 45-minute conversation. It's like, oh boy, okay, pleasure talking to you, and then you move on. So
some people do like to, especially the older people we
They
don't know.
like to
Sometimes
chat,
they
yeah.
like to chat, but I don't mind that, honestly.
no, not at all.
Because
That's part of, and then next time you go back, you at least have a conversation. You have something to pick up on.
but my point was that I don't push sales.
I'm not pushing sales.
I'm not saying you are.
Well, I don't know. It
Well, I
sounds
think-
like it.
Well, no, a lot of people are.
Yeah.
Right. But and that probably works for them. You just have to see what works for you.
Yeah.
My personality is not the type to push sales, even though I am in sales. At the same time, I don't shy away from it. If they ask me about the market, I will tell them, yeah, if you're asking me personally, I think this is what's best for you. And often now with detached homes, what's best for them is to sell. But I always say it depends on your situation. What are your incentives? What is your timeline? I mean, if this is your forever home and you want to, pass this on to your kids, then definitely not. But according to the market, I do talk about the market. I do say what's right and wrong for them. But I don't door knock when they answer the door. I say, blah, blah, blah. I'm a salesperson. Are you interested in selling? I never ask that question. I never ask, are you interested in selling? And maybe something tells me that you probably do.
No, not right
You
off
don't?
the bat. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't.
All right.
I generally, talk about how the market's doing, and if they're interested in knowing what the property is worth. And that's not, I'm not actually asking them if they want to sell. If they're interested in knowing what the market is worth, then it's something that's been on their mind, and they're considering it, or they've thought about it. And then we can take the conversation further from that point on. But generally right now, because of how hot the market is, a lot of people don't know what their property's worth.
Yeah.
They don't know, and that's the thing. Some people, once they know what their property's worth, then they think about perhaps upsizing, downsizing, or making a move. And so, right now I'm just asking people if they want to know what their property's worth, and I'm doing CMAs for them. And then after that point, they will call me back if they're interested in taking the next step.
Let me ask you a question, because there has been advice to me in both ways. Some people say do not reveal your estimation until you can get a listing from them. Others say what you do. It's always to praise the property and send them a CMA. How come, obviously, since that's your approach right now, where you are giving them CMAs, what led you to that approach? What do you think about the other approach that states, give them a general idea, but if you're going to give them detailed adjustments and CMA and all the specific figures, don't do that, because they might just take that and work with someone else, or they might shop it around, or you should only do that when you can guarantee or 95% certainty that they're going to work with you.
That's fine. People can, they're free to do as they wish, and anybody that wants to take my CMA and then use another agent, you can use another agent, but that doesn't mean you're going to get the same results that you would if you were to work with me, because coming up with a property appraisal is one thing. Being able to negotiate and sell the property for its top value
100%
is a completely different other thing. So,
100%.
It really depends on a person. If they're interested in a very specific CMA, then I walk through the property and I make my notes, and then I go back and I present it in person. And then if there's interest, then we take the conversation further about selling the property. And usually by that point, they're probably ready to sign. Now, in this case, these people were not quite ready to go on the market, and I didn't even go inside the house. I asked them to send me some pictures, which they did, and I did a very general assessment, and I gave them a range as to what the property's worth. Usually, if I do a very specific and detailed CMA, my range is within 10 to 15,000. And then, if it's not a detailed report, then the range is certainly a lot wider. And so you can take that to anyone, and that range, that's not going to really give you an exact price point as to what it's worth. And the other person you're going to deal with is going to be like, okay, this is $50,000, $60,000 apart, this range. I could have come up with the same range. This doesn't really help them in any way. So, and I make that very clear. If I don't see the inside and interior of your property, then it's very difficult for me to give you an exact range. And so if that's what they want, then they're thinking about selling, or they've thought about it quite a bit. If they want a wide range, then they just kind of want to know where the property falls within the market. And that's fine. You can run with that and give it to whomever you want. It doesn't impact me in any way. I've heard of what you said. At the end of the day, my point is to provide a service. And if they're interested in knowing what I have to say and my valuation, then that is my job, and that's what I want to provide. That's me providing value to that individual. If they want to abuse that or take it and go somewhere else, then you know what? It is what it is. I'm not going to get bothered by that. I'm going to continue moving forward and continue to offer my service with integrity, with respect, and in a professional manner. And oftentimes, in the long run, things come back to you as long as you conduct yourself in the same manner. So I'm okay with it. I don't really care a whole lot about that. It's about my service and what I offer, and I'm not going to compromise that if somebody has the idea of just using my CMA and then taking somebody else, because that's just my opinion as to the value of your property. That's not.
Yeah, they might.
You're not taking my negotiation skills.
I was about to say that exactly. I mean, the estimation, proper estimation appraisal is. I don't know if it's fair to say it's only half the work. I don't know what it's quarter, half, whatever you want to say it is. But I feel like where Ali really shines is in the negotiations, in getting the best deal for his clients, whether he's on the buying or the selling side, and being able to smell out bullshit and being able to move forward in the right way for his clients. So, and I feel like I am also developing those skills as well, and I do have some of those skills as well. Appraisal is only, once again, if you want to say half or quarter, whatever you want to say,
it's part of the job. As to what percentage it is, that's up for interpretation, or that's subjective. It's not. It's important. Pricing is certainly is very important in the entire process.
Exactly.
However, a wide range or a narrow range, that's just one aspect of it. It's knowing what to say, how to say it, and when to really shut up as a real estate agent. To let the other party do all the talking and give up vital information
and show their hand.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. So that's where I practice, and that's where I think my strong suit is. That's not something that you can take with you and share with another agent. That's knowing how to do it based on experience, based on doing it. And that's really where Sam and I are working on in order to strengthen those skill sets. And over time, as you sell more properties, you conduct more negotiations, you get better at that. That's not a skill set they can take with them, or tell their agent, oh, you should do this, you should do that, because
it's funny, man. Like it's
like saying Michael Jordan when he
does this
fadeaways and
okay, let's not compare ourselves to Michael Jordan first step.
In a certain way where he did, this twist.
Wait.
And that landed
the
points.
Michael Jordan was not dancing in a Bollywood film. He wasn't doing this. Number
you get
two.
What I'm saying, like a wrist flick or something.
Number two. As much as I just talked up Ali, and legitimately so, and I talked up myself, let's not compare ourselves to Michael Jordan.
I'm not comparing myself to Michael Jordan.
Of this field, we're
okay. So who do you want to use?
Well, anyways, before we get to comparison,
Crosby when he just started in the NHL.
Sure. No, we're higher than that. But point being, it's funny though. Yeah, I mean, it's just so many stories we can tell of like people telling us what to do, even our own clients. This is what you should do. This is what you should do, and me looking at my client and telling him, look, I'm telling you, we should not go about this offer like this. It's not going to work out for you. Ultimately,
it's
their choice. But even if I think it's very, very idiotic, I will really stress it and say, hey, man, this is not going to work. And I hate to be that as an agent and be negative, but if it's just what they think to do is not going to work, I'm going to tell them it's not going to work. And then we go forward with it. It doesn't work. And they're like, why didn't it work? Well, I just told you what we did was your idea. And I said you shouldn't do it. And then the next step, next type up at the plate, you tell them, hey, listen to me. This time, let's not do what we did last time. Right? I'm the professional. I'm getting paid for a reason here. So let's just do what I did. Or do what I suggest and go forward with it. And, you know, they have like a little like, oh, okay, like, we'll see, do your thing. And it works. And, you know.
Well, that's the thing, right? Sometimes you got to let them fall. Yeah.
Take that victory lap in your head. Because you don't want to rub it in their face and be like, look, you saw no, as soon as I did it, it worked. And what you wanted to do didn't work. You see what I'm talking about? You can't be like that. That's abrasive. Right?
No, yeah, you're right. But sometimes you got to let them
fall.
Yeah.
Anyways, speaking of falling is sometimes the end of things. And
I love the segues. Speaking You've been on a roll with these segues. I gotta say.
Speaking of end of things, we have to end this podcast, this episode today. As always, we appreciate you watching the full videos, the clips. Subscribe, comment, rate, and review.
Our contact information is down below. Feel free to reach out. Sam's email, phone number,
his email,
Instagram, office number.
His Tinder is always. No, I'm kidding. Oh, wow. I'm kidding. Anyways, get in touch. See you next week. Thank you.